Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:07. It's O'Connor and Company. Tuesday morning here in your nation's capital. Thanks for joining us. Coming out at 6:05, Sean Kennedy. Oh, no, that's right now. Sean Kennedy will join us momentarily. 7:05, Ron Halber of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington. 8:05, Brendan Carr, FCC Commissioner. And 8:35, Jim Jordan, Chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the House. It's Larry O'Connor with Cassie Smedile. One other thing here, Cassie, if I could, just as we tie up our conversation about the tawdry, disgusting, despicable, evil Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of people are saying, well, you know why they're not releasing anything? Because Trump's on the list. Let me tell you something. If Trump's name were even obliquely mentioned in any of the files of Jeffrey Epstein, I assure you that over the last 10 years, either James Comey or Robert Mueller or Adam Schiff or Joe Biden or Merrick Garland or Christopher Wray, it would have come out. Trust me, that would have been a big deal.
Good point.
I think one thing we can be confident of is that Donald Trump is in no way implicated in any of the information regarding Jeffrey Epstein. I assure you they would have brought that out.
Yes, that's just the one thing they didn't leak in the Biden administration.
Right. So what? Alvin Bragg is, what can we indict this guy on? Nah, let's not do the Epstein thing. Let's do some fun, get the Stormy Daniels deal. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I promise you. All right, joining us right now is our buddy Sean Kennedy. He's the president of Virginians for Safe Communities. And there's a lot to get to with you, Sean, first of all, this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm glad to be on. Thank you.
Let's continue to talk about this gentleman named Richard Cox. Richard Cox is a convicted sex offender, and he is out freely roaming the streets. When we first encountered this guy or learned about him, he claims to be transgender. And he was dressing in a women's locker room at a local high school where little girls were in there as well, getting ready for an open swim over the weekends. And we are now learning that he is frequenting children's playgrounds. Channel 7 WJLA has some video of him out there. And by the way, for a transgender woman, I got to tell you, usually they dress a little bit more feminine than this guy. He sure is presenting as a dude. Where does this stand right now? And have any of our local law enforcement or Commonwealth's attorneys been held accountable for letting him walk free and continuing to let him walk free?
Well, there's been no accountability, but as it stands right now, he's being held in the Arlington County Jail, and there he faces 20-plus charges for various things, including, obviously, indecent exposure and some other related charges. So he conceivably could get 20 years, but he won't. They'll cut a plea deal once, obviously, the media backs off, and that's, one of my causes right now is to make sure the media is aware of these court dates and keeps tracking them, because every time...
Other than this show and Nick Minnock on WJLA, has there been any other coverage from the media?
Yeah, actually, Fox News National did some stories and sent reporters.
Okay.
I'm in touch with a number of the other outlets, and they're following. Actually, they've showed up.
Good.
One of the reporters at a major national newspaper that is also based here in our region, so therefore I will not name. They actually came to a number of the hearings, and their presence may have been the reason that some of these were punted, because they knew they would get a story out of it if they did make a deal. So they keep kicking it down the road, hoping that people will give up and forget about it. And then once it's a done deal, they'll move on.
I appreciate you staying on this, and I think it is because you've been on this that others are taking note, as they rightfully should. But my broader question is, I live in Fairfax County. I have 2 small children. We are in that phase where we're going to all of the kids' playgrounds and the spray parks, and we're in the locker rooms at the community center. And how can people know that this is happening? Because I have to admit, too, I'm not necessarily seeing the nightly news every night. That's bedtime. That's toddler roundup time. So what can parents do to keep each other informed, especially if the media is not going to make this a daily story?
Well, I know a lot of people post things on Nextdoor here in Fairfax County, and that's one way that a lot of people stay in touch. I mean, there's obviously the way one of the things is obviously the transgender angle here makes this sort of controversial because people see it as some type of attack on that community or whatever. But the real point here is that this individual is a registered sex offender, and he's allowed in the bathrooms, and they knew who he was, and they ignored it. So in terms of informing your neighbors, obviously it's just talk to people and do that. But there are other ways that people stay in touch in their communities. Aren't necessarily watching the news next door. Twitter obviously has a national coverage, but there's other ways, Facebook groups in your neighborhood community or whatnot. But it is very hard if you can't follow the news, if you're not keeping up on this. The county has no interest in propagating or telling people what's actually going on in these instances. Pat Harity, who's the lone Republican county supervisor, has been vocal about this, puts it out in his newsletter. So, I recommend you subscribe to Pat's newsletter. But unfortunately, the Board of Supervisors is pretty much silent or afraid of this entire topic.
Well, by the way, James Walkinshaw, who's currently a member of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, is running for that open seat, Virginia 11, in the special election. Perhaps he should be asked about this. Perhaps he should be held accountable for not using his powerful position on that board to do something about this. We also want to inform our listeners that the latest security camera shows this person, Richard Cox, again, a Tier 3, that's the most dangerous registered sex offender, walking out of the Our Special Harbor Spray Park. This is a water park designed for young children with disabilities. And he was all alone, without any children, dressed as a man, leaving that water park and walking in the direction of Chessie's big backyard playground. And that's from security footage obtained by Channel 7. Sean, while we've got you, I was amused. I know you were as well because I saw your social media postings. The New York Times has this, big gotcha story. Virginia has become a hotbed for immigration arrests. Lawyers and advocates have theories as to why immigration arrests have accelerated in Virginia. They're like, gee, I wonder why there's so much ICE activity happening in Virginia. Well, Sean, perhaps you can illuminate the New York Times.
Well, there's a lot of criminal activity by illegal aliens in Northern Virginia, particularly. And I listed in that Twitter thread you're referring to 10 serious crimes that happened in the last 12 months, everything from murder to rape to carjacking, lots of child sex offenses. This couple that, is sort of gone by the wayside, I believe it was over in Reston, that chained up their children and they were starving them to death. It turns out the husband's illegal. I've also been told by other people the mother is illegal as well. These kids were subjected to horrible, basically torture, and people are like, oh, how dare you deport these people? He's a family man. He's a Virginia man. Yeah. It's this absurd thing where we're playing footsie with the truth, and ICE is going after these people in Northern Virginia because there's a lot of them in Northern Virginia. We have an illegal alien crime problem in Northern Virginia. And there's a great line in that New York Times article I will point out. It's one of the immigrant rights lawyers says, the White House is not afraid of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. Hear, 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 hear. Why would anyone be afraid of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors? Yeah. Sometimes it feels like the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors is your local zoning board. I mean, what do they do that actually matters? What do they do that affects anyone? Actually, the Fairfax County Board of Zoning is more important than the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors half the time. So the White House is ignoring them because they have no jurisdiction and they can pound the table all they want, but they're getting dangerous people off the streets because there's dangerous people on our streets.
Yeah, a great point. And we're listening. It's like we're through the looking glass here where, they're screaming that ICE is engaged, understandably, in Southern California, in Los Angeles, because guess what? There's a whole lot of illegal immigrant activity, criminal illegal immigrant activity, to say the least, in Los Angeles. They're screaming about that, and then they're just as engaged in Northern Virginia, and they're screaming about that. It's like, I'm sorry, where is ICE allowed to do their job, boys and girls? One of the other reasons why Virginia might be an area of interest for ICE is that they actually have a Republican governor who is cooperating with them, Glenn Youngkin. And that won't be the case if Abigail Spanberger wins the election. She's come out again. There's a new video of her talking about sanctuary policies. Sean, can you stay with us for a minute here? I want to play it for you and have you comment on what this election is looking like with regard to crime and safety.
Sure.
Great. Sean Kennedy stays with us, but first, 6:15 WMAL.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
I certainly want to protect every person who might be interested in arriving at the United States, claiming asylum, working here, coming as a refugee, whatever the parameters or the need that begins their desire to move to our country.
That's Abigail Spanberger in another Zoom interview asked about sanctuary policies that have been in place in the Commonwealth of Virginia, whether jurisdictions like Fairfax County will actually call them sanctuary or not. If local law enforcement are not cooperating with federal law enforcement with criminal illegal aliens, they are providing sanctuary. That's the bottom line. And Abigail Spanberger, the Democrat nominee, Sean Kennedy, seems down with that. It'll be quite a stark change if she becomes governor. Compared to what we've got right now in terms of law and order.
Absolutely. And we know what's funny about this thing that quote reminds me of is who Abigail Spanberger is, or at least, what she writes on her bio, that she was this, cloak and dagger CIA agent. She did counter intel. She did, special operation, recruiting spies overseas, all these things like that. Well, one of the things about importing people from another country that she says want asylum or refugee status and bring them all in or whatever, is you have to vet them. But for the last few years, even under the Trump administration, to be totally honest, and the Obama administration, there was no vetting. And the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General, which is a completely nonpartisan office, has written about this extensively. We do not know who these people are. We would not operate in Afghanistan without vetting people that we were working with as, spies or whatever, and find out what they're really about. She supposedly worked with these people on overseas assets. We're going to import 10 million people, which is what we did over the last few years, and not know who any of them are and say, oh, well, you claimed asylum, so you must be a good guy. Oh, we don't need your fingerprints. We don't need to know who you are. We can't check with anyone because, Guatemala's criminal record database is state of the art. This is absurdist that she wants no consequences for people. She doesn't want ICE to do their job and get criminal aliens off the street. This is dangerous. It's clear that she either didn't do what she said because she's not serious about what she used to do for a living, or she's been completely captured by basically lunatics who think that criminals roaming our street, especially ones with serious criminal records, trained to Aregua, there's Brazilian murderers we've caught. There's obviously child offenders all over Central America that have come here, Chinese spies. And we're not going to vet any of them because they claimed asylum. Yeah. We live in cuckoo world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope that this is just the first of many campaign ads against her, because we know where the American people are. We know where Virginians are on this issue. We pay a lot of taxes to live in Virginia because it's a safe area, and this is the gateway issue for uprooting communities that we once took for granted as being safe. We've seen it happen all over the country. And you're right, the National Party and Democrats are trying to put her out there as this moderate Democrat, so different from what's happening in New York with Mandani. And this issue alone shows that there's really no daylight. If you're going to run as a Democrat, you have to be an illegal immigrant. But again, my question is back to, how do we knock common sense into voters to say there's real consequences for this vote? Don't fall for it. And I know you're doing the Lord's work on getting this out on Twitter and all of that, but it still comes back to, how do we rehab the minds of people who just see her as this moderate CIA agent?
Well, I mean, you have to make it clear that what she's proposing is a problem. I mean, right. Unfortunately, you cannot unring the bell. It is very hard to turn back a narrative when it is set. So sometimes you have to come at this at a different angle. And one of the things that people need to think about when they talk about the policy of politics is, if somebody sounds moderate or is perceived as moderate, attacking them as not moderate is trying to undo the narrative that is not going to work. You need to find out a way to get to her policies are going to have consequences, and therefore sort of guilt by association. Casa de Maryland, these immigrant rights groups are advocating for this radical policy, and she's standing with them. So the only way that Spanberger is ever going to get tagged with these policies, because she'll just deny it and do weasel words and say, I just mean that really nice Rohingya woman who was, fleeing genocide. I don't mean these terrorists or these sex offenders. I mean the good ones. Yeah. And she'll always get away with it. because she's perceived as moderate. So turning back the narrative on crime or all these other things, you have to meet people where they are. And so many times people try to argue on facts or basis. At the end of the day, anecdote beats data every time. Mm-hmm. And we're sort of in this perpetual fight where we're like, no, listen to me. And they're banging the table. And you're never going to get somebody to hear you out and say Abigail Spanberger is some kind of radical like Zohran. Yeah. So sometimes I think that's the wrong way to say that she's guilty because she has the same policies. You have to say the people who she's allowing inside of her tent have the same policies.
I agree, and if we had a media who I have not seen one person from the Washington Post to any of the networks or local stations ask Abigail Spanberger a challenging question at all in this campaign. They are on her side 100%. But it's a really simple question to ask. Listen, when ICE began their operations in Southern California, Governor Gavin Newsom got every single Democrat governor to sign a letter condemning the actions and saying that they would not cooperate with federal authorities. Abigail Spanberger, if you were governor of Virginia, would you join Gavin Newsom and Kathy Hochul, or would you stand alone and say, nope, I won't join you, Gavin Newsom. I'm my own woman, and I will cooperate and make sure that the streets of Northern Virginia are safe? It's that simple. Just tell us where you stand. Do you stand with Gavin Newsom, or do you stand with enforcing the law? I'd love that question to be answered at some point.
I'm going to stop you there. I think you're allowing a politician to do what they want to do, which is get out of the question and say, I'm going to enforce the law. This is federal jurisdiction. No. Straight up question. Hiram Raqueno Rodriguez tried to abduct a 4-year-old child from her mother's house and commit horrible acts against her. The prosecutor in Fairfax County dropped the case. Should he have been deported by ICE? Should Hiram be deported? Then if she says yes, then you can follow from there and say, what are the ICE activities, whatever. But if she's going to basically deflect on the beginning, she doesn't have any ability to answer a question. But if the answer was no, he shouldn't be deported, then you have all these other questions about how crazy she sounds. Yeah. So you need to get at her in a more direct way, or somebody in her hometown. I mean, in Culpeper or wherever else, Abigail has to respond for what's actually happening in these communities to real people.
Amen. Well said. Sean Kennedy, that's why we love having you on. Appreciate it, brother. Thanks for joining us. It's 6:24. Coming up, an ambush on an ICE facility and 11 charged in an attack. Again, crazy Antifa radicals trying to murder ICE agents. We'll give you all the terrifying details next.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:36 and it's full speed ahead here this morning on WMAL. Thanks for tuning in here to your Greater Washington conversation every single morning. Starting at 7:05, we'll speak with Ron Halber of the Jewish Community Relations Council. 8:05, Brendan Carr, FCC Commissioner. He's the chairman, of the FCC. They get to wear an extra sash and a fez, I believe, when they become the chairman.
Does he get to walk around with a beep button?
Oh, yeah. Constantly censoring people. 8:35, Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan. All coming up. That's Cassie Smedile suggesting that in some way I need to be censored by the FCC.
I wasn't saying that.
No one tells me what to say, damn it. Oh, can I say damn it?
Beep.
There it is.
I was late.
A horrible day yesterday in McLean, Texas, as ICE agents were literally under fire. An ambush in McLean left the assailant shot and neutralized, as they say, but local police and federal agents, after returning fire, it turns out there were certain injuries there. This is a guy in tactical gear, dressed like your typical Antifa scum, and a rifle, started opening fire on these ICE agents. Moments later, the border czar Tom Homan appeared on Fox News, and he said, with the rhetoric we've heard in the political sphere in Washington, D.C., it was only a matter of time until something like this happened. Here's Homan.
Who were these suspects who were fired, who actually fired the shots and were later arrested? Who were they, Tom?
Look, they're your typical protesters that go from protesters to criminals. The attack on ICE officers, you've covered it many times, is up nearly 700% now. We were talking 500% a couple weeks ago, so it continues. The rhetoric against the men and women of ICE is skyrocketing, especially by members of Congress. We have senators, we have Congress people that compare ICE to the Nazis, compare ICE to racists, and it just continues. So the public thinks, well, if a member of Congress can attack ICE, why can't we? So the rhetoric has to stop, or it's a matter of time for someone, one of the ICE officers goes down or a criminal goes down. But we already see an officer go down.
To be clear, so these were American citizens? These weren't illegals who opened fire?
No. As far as the investigation, I want to get ahead of the local investigation on this, but they appear to be agitators, people that are protesting ICE operations, damaging ICE property, want to attack ICE officers.
Now, this comes actually just moments after yesterday morning. Axios published an article headlined, "Democrats Told to Get Shot for the Anti-Trump Resistance." At town halls in their districts and in one-on-one meetings with constituents and activists, Democrat members of Congress are facing a growing thrum of demands to break the rules, fight dirty, and not be afraid to get hurt. Here's the problem, Cassie. The political rhetoric in this country over the last several years has reached such a fevered pitch. Not only have they called Trump Hitler and those of us who support Trump Nazis, but they've also said that should he win the last election, that would be the last free election in our country. It's the end of democracy. It's lawlessness. He's a convicted felon. He's a rapist. And, people hear that stuff, and after a while, they actually take it seriously. And if you feel so powerless that this last election means the end of all free elections in our country, and I haven't heard anybody on MSNBC walk that back and say, no, everybody, it's going to be okay. We'll have another free election. They're going to think they're desperate and they're going to have to take up arms. And that's the kind of thing we're faced with right now. We need some grown-ups in the room to step this down.
Right. I mean, just as we were talking about earlier, even with the Texas floods, the waters hadn't even rescinded before they wanted to politicize it. That's the name of their game. And I see it. I'm sure you see it. People, who have nothing to do with politics, but post so freely on their social media about how they do think this is the end times. They do think Trump is Hitler, and anyone who supports him, everything you just laid out.
Yeah.
And at some point, someone who's not right in their mind sees that as permission to do what their demons are telling them to do. Yeah. And that's what you're seeing play out here. Because they're also, I just saw a video yesterday that went viral, and the gal was canceled, rightfully so, for it. I think she was like a preschool teacher who was saying, I think they're doing that bill signing outside on the White House lawn. I'm just saying, if you are thinking about it, that's out there. That's right. All the time.
Yep.
For everyone to see.
Yeah, just basically sort of assassination fantasy porn kind of despicable stuff. And by the way, we're not done with yesterday's headlines. An Alvarado ICE facility was a target for a conspiracy attack. It has been thwarted by the Justice Department, but 11 people were arrested in what was a planned ambush in Alvarado on July 4th. Officials said that 10 to 12 individuals in military-style clothing fired fireworks to lure officers out, while a gunman in the woods shot at Alvarado police officers. One of them was shot in the neck and is expected to survive. 10 suspects, mostly from North Texas, charged with attempted murder of a federal officer, with one facing obstruction of justice. And again, I want to reiterate, these are federal law enforcement and local law enforcement who are doing their jobs. Mm-hmm. And you've got political rhetoric from the highest levels of the Democratic Party calling them Nazis, saying they're fascists, saying that they're covering their faces, so they're Trump's private stormtroopers. You've got Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, and Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, saying that they are responsible for violence and destruction in Los Angeles when it's their stormtroops that they've called out. They're flying monkeys that have been sent out in their Antifa tactical gear that are causing all of the mayhem.
They wouldn't need to. I mean, the ICE agents, thank God for them, but they wouldn't have a job if the Democrats didn't open the borders, if the Democrats didn't allow lawlessness to persist, if they didn't allow bail, all of that, or you know what I mean, no bail. Mm-hmm. That it's the lawlessness that persists that necessitates these brave men and women to go to work every day
Right.
and help enforce the law, which is all they're doing. They're enforcing
That's
the
right.
law amongst law breakers.
And the protectors of democracy, guess what? We had an election. Democracy had its say. The people voted for a president who promised to enforce the law. Now he's enforcing the law, and now they're using their rhetoric to allow law enforcement agents to be targeted by the worst of the worst. And I heard not one Democrat yesterday come out and condemn the violence against these ICE agents. It's a sad state of affairs in American politics when a Democrat is in political jeopardy if they condemn violence against a law enforcement officer. It's 6:43.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
So this James Gunn dude, he's the director and he's the head of the DC studios that makes all the DC superhero films, and he's the director of the new Superman. He continues to double and triple down on politicizing Superman. You know, they've gotten rid of the truth, justice, and the American way kind of thing. Now it's, I don't know, the way of the UN or something. Who knows? And he continues to talk about how Superman is really an immigrant story, and he just came here to make the best of it. And he said, we've lost the value of basic human kindness. By the way, Superman isn't a human. That's one thing. But he keeps saying, yes, this is a very political movie. We don't want a political movie. We want a superhero movie if you're calling the movie Superman. Also, as we're talking immigrants and everything, yes, I guess technically Superman is an immigrant, albeit from another country. Can we call him an alien? Are we allowed to do that? You know who else, based on that description, is an immigrant? And General Zod, the guy who came here to murder everybody and destroy the planet. So, I mean, pick your poison here if you want to make this an immigrant story.
Yeah, all immigrants are equal, right? All alien immigrants from other planets are equal.
Yes.
Gotta love them all. But yes, to your point, that people want to go to the movies for escapism. People want the story of Superman is such because he's a good guy taking out the bad guys with his superhuman powers.
Yeah.
Not because of some woke political mission. It was just good versus evil. Good wins the day.
It's that simple. Yeah. And by the way, here, cut 12, here's James Gunn at a sneak premiere. The movie opens this Thursday. Here he is.
It is exactly what the movie is about, I think, that, like, we support our people, you know? We love our immigrants. Yes, Superman is an immigrant, and yes, the people that we support in this country are immigrants, and if you don't like that, then you're not American.
There you go. I do love it when a Hollywood director tells me who qualifies to be an American or not based on their political positions. Sean Davis at The Federalist has a theory here, and I think he might be right. The movie right now is getting terrible audience ratings. People hate it. It's a bad movie. And so what they're doing is they're trying to get out in front of that and make it a political thing. So if it tanks at the box office, they'll say, oh, well, see, it was the MAGA boycott. Just like Snow White, just like that horrible female version of Ghostbusters. You know, it was a great film, but MAGA killed it. Trump killed it. That's what they're doing.
It's giving an awful lot of credit to MAGA, but I think you're right that it's just bad because you know who had a really great opening box office weekend last weekend and they didn't make it political?
Who?
Jurassic Park. Jurassic
go.
World, whatever it is. They just let the dinosaurs be the dinosaurs. I don't think it's some big woke climate change movie. I don't think. They just let dinosaurs be dinosaurs. And the story that people fell in love with.
Technically, dinosaur movies are ultimately about climate change. I mean, people might want to look into what
Don't
happened.
get woke, Larry.
I'm just saying the Ice Age did, in fact, happen. And, well, all right, I'll leave it there. 6:53.
Making sense of your world.
There are a lot of things that really tick me off.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Making sense of the news.